Hello, my friends. I'm not sure if you have been through this kind of interviews. That looks fairly simple, but you failed it. You reckon you have achieved 100% of the task requirements, but there are actually traps in it, and you don't know. You just didn't meet the expectation of the interviewer, and you have no idea what you missed. Today, I'm going to walk through a fairly simple task, but there are traps in it. Yeah, let's do it together and see if we can learn a thing or two. Okay, I will start from scratch, and the challenge is about writing a fetch function for generic users. All right, first of all, we might want to break down this task a little bit. What are we going to achieve? And number one, definitely we need to write a fetch function and return a result. Then that'll be fetch data and return it. Of course, there'll be error handling. To be considered. And aside from that, anything else we can think of probably would be, how about caching? So if the same URL has been hit, probably we don't want to call the backend again. Since caching is mentioned, how about the TTL of the caching? That can be done as well. See, I've bring out more and more scenarios now. It started with just a simple fetch function, but there are too many things to be considered if you want to make this to a senior level or even higher. Then probably more things to think about is how about the, for example, the timeout. And so what if when we hit a timeout, what should we do? Probably abort it or reject it. Yeah, so far so good. There are many scenarios mentioned here already. It could be ongoing. For example, how about the data is too large? It cannot be resolved in one .json call. Then probably can we turn to different solutions, things like that. But this is complex enough for today. And yeah, let's start from coding. Then we start from a fetch function, and I give a name const fetch data, which is a sing function. Then that will return the API response. So to make things easier, I have a URL here, which is working that can be used for testing purpose later. And now we can take a URL, which is string type, and we will call the result equals in fetch URL, then await. So with the result, if that returns okay, and from here we can do data equals result.json. That should be await as well, because that returns a promise. Then we can return the data, and otherwise return now. So basically that completed step 1, but we don't have error handling yet. And yeah, then we can have a try catch and put all those in. Error, give it any type, and we'll keep throw the error for now. Yeah, if there's no, is the response is not okay, I mean didn't return okay status, we probably will throw a new error as well. No data found. That's probably it for step 2, which is good. Now we need to consider caching the data. To cache the data, we need to have a cache somewhere. A good solution is utilizing the JavaScript closure. We can have a wrapper function, and from the wrapper function we could have a cache which is a key value pair, and the key would be the URL and the value would be the data. So then we could create a new function. Let's give it a name, create fetch instance, and which is also a function. From here, since yeah, we probably don't need to pass the URL here. What we need to do is having a cache. Have a cache, and the key will be a string type, which is the URL, and the value can be any for now. It will be up to this fetch data. When we have the data, we'll assign the corresponding value later. So now we move this fetch data into this create instance in create a fetch instance function. So yeah, by utilizing the advantage of the closure, the fetch data actually can access the cache defined outside. And from here, so we can do 2 things. So number 1, now we are working at step 3. Number 1, let's comment this out. If the key, if the URL key exists in the cache, then we return data from the cache. Otherwise, return the data from fetch function. Okay, so what we are going to do is, from here I will do a check, cache.get URL. If that's existing, we will return cache.get URL. That's good for now. And else, we will probably, we will go through this fetch part. Okay, Then once we have the data, we need to cache that data. Let's do a simple test. Let's just use this URL and do a simple test for now. We will call, from here we need to return this fetchData function. Then that can be called from outside. How it can be used is like so this basically it's a function, and that function returns promise. What we can do is write a async function and execute it. And so we can do an anonymous function, and which is async. And in this async function, probably I'll give it a name rather than writing like that. Give it log result, which is async function. And from here, we call this fetch instance. Data equals fetch instance, which need to have a await front. Then that takes the URL. So let's give it a URL, which is this one. So then we can just console log the data and see what will we get. Log result. Now start basically will run TS node and run the index file. Okay, we get all the data back, which is working. But how do I know if it's from the cache? And let's try. So if it's from the cache, we will console log cache the data. And if it's from the fetch function, we will console log fetch the data. Okay, we are not handle any errors inside. This could be, it's up to the consumer to handle it, and I'm not doing try catch here. Yeah. Cool. Let's try to run this let's try to run this twice. See what we have. Give it data 2, and if I console log data 1 and data 2 here, I'm expecting to see one from the fetch data first, then the other one is from the cached data. But for now, we are console logging out 100 items, which is not ideal. Let's just take the first one, which will be easier. Let's run this again. Okay, the first one is fetched, the second one is cached. If I'm running this again and again, I believe, for example, 3, maybe I don't even need to just do this. cached, yeah, which is working. Now we've resolved the third point. Then we're gonna think about the TTL, the lifetime of this cache, which can be passed in from the fetch instance, create a fetch instance as a config. That's what I'm thinking. And yeah, let's define a new type. Interface, call it down. Fetch, ifetch config, which is just make it simple for now, which is TTL, and the die can be a number. That's just a number, which is optional as well. So from here, we could have TTL by default given a number, and let's say 100 milliseconds. Then yeah, from here, once we have the cache, we need to do a check. So there are actually two possibilities. If the cache expired, what we're gonna fetch, and we're gonna delete the cache. Then return the fetch data, right? But if the cache is still valid, return the cache, which will be the second part. So from here, I might just easily just add one more if. So what can we do is probably when we are saving the data into the cache, rather than directly saving the data, we probably will save it as a value, something like this, value, which is data, then in expired at, which would be date now plus the TTL, right? Probably this, to make this code be drier, I can call cached record equals, right? Then if cache the record, what we'll do is if cache the record and the dot, so that will be, yeah. Let's define a type outside first. Yeah, but the type can be actually defined here. Value, I'll give you any value, and the expired, let's just follow this, expired at, which is a number. Then yeah, that will work. From here we have the cached record. If the cached record dot expired at if date now dot now is greater than expired at, which means the cache expired. So from here, what we'll do is delete the cache. Delete, and the key is URL, and then we will fetch data. So I don't want to copy this again. Probably what I will do is I'll put this in a new function. And probably rename this function to be something else. Rather than call it fetch data, I could say lazy fetch data, and that should be returned as a lazy fetch as well. And then I will have a new function which is just the fetch data. I can cut this off and take it out. Fetch data cool. Now we've got a default TTL for the cache to expire, and for now it's a good point to test if this is working or not. So let me put this down, the scenarios. And first of all, fetch should definitely call the API. Then, and if cache is not expired, the fetch data should still come from the cache. If cache is expired, it needs to fetch again. So that's what I'm expecting to see. Let's give it a go. So by default is 100 milliseconds. If I run this 3 times and I'm console log, just console log the data. Just double check if the data is, the cache is here. Yeah, that looks correct. Let's run this for now. Oh, sorry, I'm just printing out, probably printing out the first item. Yeah, the first one is fetched and the later ones are cached, are from the cached. Then probably if let's write a sleep function, for example. Cause some deliberate delays. Let me give it a try. Yeah, cool. Which is working. Right. So the TTL caching that's resolved. Right, now let's move to the last task, which is timeout and abort this fetch function. And how can we do that? Actually, there are 2 ways. The first one would be we could utilize AbortController, basically by passing the controller signal into the fetch function. Then we could manually call the abort method. And the second way would be by using promise.raise, by put the real fetch. So real fetch, which is currently for now is a lazy fetch data, and a promise .resolve. So rather than that, probably something like a new promise, and from here we have so that would be the second method. Right, I will give a demo for both, and let's give it a try with the first one first. Cool. I think from this point, when the fetch data is called. So regardless, as I think the cache part should not be touched. If there's a cache and it's valid, it should always return the cache, and it should not trigger any of the timeout logic. But otherwise, when we reached into this fetch data function, we will start timing. How can I do this? Is by, we probably will take another configure attribute, which is timeout, which is a number type as well, which is optional. And from here, by default, I'm giving 300 millisecond. Which will be equal to. Then in this fetch function, we could initialize a controller object, which is AbortController, and this object has a attribute which is a signal controller signal. If we pass this signal into the fetch function from outside this fetch, we could call the abort manually. Set timeout. In the callback, we can call controller.abort, which is a function. And when do we call that? That'll be after the timeout. Right, so after 300 milliseconds, if the call takes that long, we will abort this fetch. Hence, it will trigger the catch block to catch that error. Just let me do a test first. Okay, let's write down the test scenario regarding how do we test this this timeout issue. Scenario. What can we do is, in normal condition, it's been given a default timeout, and the fetch should work as it is. But if it's being given a very short timeout, it should abort the request, and we should be able to see it. Let's give it a try. So if I'm running this app as usual, the fetch data is working as it is. But if I'm manually given the timeout, which is give it like a 10 millisecond. Right, this is aborted. You can see that's the message has been logged out. But we would particularly handle these cases differently, probably comparing to other error. Let's figure out what's the name of this error. Okay, which is a abort error. So in that case, if okay, and let's run this again. Abort error. Since I didn't throw it here, both are running. Roughly like that. It's not ideal regarding this error handling part. And also we didn't log. Right. yeah, it would be great to leave it to the, for example, if this is called by the UI, the UI could handle corresponding messages. This is not ideal, but it's working for now. So far, we have the first option achieved, but we could try the timeout in a different solution. So rather than, we still take the timeout though, but rather than manually create a abort controller, let's remove this. So remove this as well, and we are not taking signal. So rather than returning the fetch data, we could return actually promise.race. From this point, we have an array of multiple promises. One is this fetch data, the real fetch data, and the second one would be a new promise. And from here, we could define resolve, and for example, error object, and could be timeout error. Oh, sorry, I missed the set timeout. Yeah, like that. That should also work. Yeah, both places need to do the same. Right, let's test this out. Yeah, I'm expecting the error to be printed out. Okay, it's not the array anymore, and yeah, cool. That's working. And so we've resolved all those 5 scenarios, but it is still not perfect. This is a TypeScript function number 1. Regarding the return type, is any, which is not okay, to be honest. And an ideal way, yeah, from here we could define a generic type, and when we are calling this fetchData function, we will actually pass this generic type in. That's defined here. The T type, yeah, we'll pass that in. So from inside this data, we will give it a type which is a T. Yeah, we could actually define our data type here. Let me quickly get this done. Okay, response item, and yeah, when we are calling the fetch instance, we pass this generic type in. So same for here. And now, okay, we have clear type definition, which is great. Yeah. But here's the problem: if you want to print out the first one, it's not going to work. What we can do is by doing a type check, array.is array. If the data is array, we will print out data 0. Otherwise, I know it is an error object. We will probably just print out data, the error. Yeah, that will be working pretty well. Yeah, timeout error. Now let's increase the time a bit more. Yeah, which is working well. And so far, so good. It works much better.